My name is Fiona Yeager. I am 32 years old. I work as a pediatric ICU nurse in Dayton, Ohio, and I am raising my daughter Lily on my own. She is 8. 3 weeks ago, my appendix ruptured at 2 in the morning. I was on the floor of the nurse station shaking, barely able to see straight. The ER team rolled me into triage within minutes. The surgeon said I needed to be in the operating room within the hour or the infection would spread. My first thought was not about the surgery. It was about Lily. Home. Asleep. Alone. I called my parents from the ER bed. I was shaking so hard the phone almost slipped out of my hand. I asked them to come get my daughter. What my mother said on that call, and what she did 4 hours later, changed everything between us. But what happened 3 weeks after that, at my parents' own dining table, in front of the entire family, that is the part I still cannot believe I went through with. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is the place where quiet people finally get to tell their side. If you have ever been the one everyone leans on but nobody thinks to check on, this story is for you. Drop a comment if you have been there. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. I moved back to Dayton 2 years ago. That was the plan. Come home. Be close to family. Give Lily her grandparents. Before Dayton, I was in Columbus. Just me and Lily in a 2-bedroom apartment near the hospital where I worked nights. It was manageable. Tight, but manageable. Then Mom had her first cardiac scare. Dad's knee surgery left him barely able to walk for 6 weeks. Karen, my older sister, called me 3 times that month, and each call ended the same way. "You're a nurse, Fiona. You would know what to do." So I came home. I found a position at Dayton Children's Hospital, pediatric ICU, 3 nights a week, 7 in the evening to 7 in the morning. I enrolled Lily in 3rd grade at the elementary school 4 blocks from our rental house, and I started helping. Because that is what I do. I drove Mom to her cardiologist every 6 weeks, 26 visits over 2 years. I managed Dad's VA disability paperwork, 14 claims submitted, tracked, and followed up. I did Karen's taxes every April, 2 years running, $1,200 per return if she had hired someone. Nobody asked me to do any of it. I just saw what needed doing, and I did it. Nurse brain. You walk into a room. You assess. You act. You do not wait for someone to hand you a clipboard. The family had a word for me. Reliable. They said it at Thanksgiving. They said it when they needed a ride. They said it when they needed a form filled out or an appointment rescheduled, or someone to sit with Dad at the VA office for 4 hours on a Tuesday. Reliable. Like it was a personality trait and not a job I never applied for. But reliable has a shelf life. I just did not know mine was about to expire. My mother's phone had 47 photos of Mackenzie on it. I know because she showed me the album once, scrolling through with her thumb, narrating each one. This is Mackenzie at volleyball. This is Mackenzie at the lake. This is Mackenzie's homecoming dress. Mackenzie is my sister Karen's daughter. 16, tall, blonde, played varsity volleyball as a sophomore, the kind of grandchild you post about. Lily had 3 photos in my mother's phone. One from Christmas 2 years ago. One from a park. One blurry shot from Easter where Lily was mid-blink. Mom drove 40 minutes to Mackenzie's volleyball games. She never once came to Lily's piano recital. Not the spring one, not the winter one. Lily stopped asking after the 2nd time. Karen's mother-in-law, Barb, also adored Mackenzie. And that was the problem. Mom and Barb were locked in a quiet competition for Mackenzie's time. Who got her for Thanksgiving? Who took her shopping for prom? Who she called first when she got her learner's permit? When Mom bought matching Taylor Swift friendship bracelets. One for her, one for Mackenzie. She posted the photo that same night. The caption said, "Grandma-granddaughter goals." Heart emoji, sparkle emoji. I saw the post at 2 in the morning, sitting in the break room of the pediatric ICU, eating a granola bar. Lily was asleep at home. I double-tapped the photo, kept scrolling. I told myself Lily was fine. She had me. She did not need bracelets or Instagram posts. She had a mother who showed up every single day. But Mom said something once that stayed with me. We were in the car after her cardiology visit. She was talking about Mackenzie again. Mackenzie actually wants to hang out with me, Mom said. Some grandkids appreciate their grandparents. I turned onto the highway and did not say a word. My shifts started at 7 in the evening and ended at 7 in the morning, 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 if someone called out. The morning routine was a machine. Alarm at 6:15. Drive to Mrs. Patterson's house. She lived 2 streets over, 74 years old, retired, kind. She watched Lily before school on the nights I worked. I would pick Lily up, drive her home, make sure she had her backpack, her lunch, her jacket. Then I would sleep from 8:30 until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. After that, errands, Mom's appointments, Dad's mail, groceries, laundry, the occasional crisis text from Karen about a form or a deadline. Lily was 8 going on 30. She packed her own lunch most days. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, a juice box. She left notes on the fridge in purple marker. Love you, Mom. Don't forget to eat. I gave the cat extra food because he looked sad. We did not have a cat. She was talking about the neighbor's cat. I had no social life. I had not been on a date since Lily's father left when she was 2. My phone's emergency contacts were Mom, Dad, and the hospital front desk. My best friend was Becca Torres, another nurse on my unit. We talked in the break room at 3 in the morning, and that counted as a social life. I was not lonely. I was efficient. There is a difference. Or at least I thought there was. Mrs. Patterson was wonderful, but she was 74. She took blood pressure medication that made her drowsy after 9 at night. She could handle mornings before school. She could not handle a 2 in the morning emergency. I did not think about that much. Until the Tuesday before everything changed. That Tuesday, I drove Mom to her cardiologist. 45 minutes each way. She sat in the passenger seat and talked about one thing the entire ride, the Eras Tour. Saturday, Fiona, Saturday. I have been waiting 14 months. She pulled out her phone and held it toward me while I was merging onto the highway. Look. Section 112, row F. Do you know how close that is? I glanced at the screen. 2 tickets. Ticketmaster confirmation. Section 112, row F, $900 each, $1,800 total. Your father nearly had a stroke when he saw the credit card statement, she said. She laughed like it was a punchline. What if something comes up Saturday? I asked. Casual. Just a question. Nothing comes up. She put her phone away. I have waited 14 months for these seats. Mackenzie is so excited. She has been making us a playlist for the drive. Us meant Mom and Mackenzie, not Mom and Lily, not Mom and me. I dropped Mom off at her house. She kissed my cheek and said, Thanks, honey. See you next Tuesday. I drove to the hospital for my shift. Parked in the employee lot at 6:47. Walked through the double doors. My stomach started cramping around 11 that night. I thought it was the cafeteria chili. I drank water. I finished my charts. At midnight, the cramps sharpened into something different, a hot, grinding pain in my lower right side. By 1:30, I could not stand up straight. Becca noticed first. Fiona, you're gray. I'm fine. You are not fine. Sit down. I sat down. The pain folded me in half. Becca called the ER team. The world does not stop because you worry about everything. That is what Mom had told me. She was wrong. The world stopped at 1:43 in the morning, in a hallway that smelled like hand sanitizer, because my body finally decided it was done being reliable too. The ER doctor was a woman named Singh. She pressed on my lower right abdomen and I nearly came off the table. CT scan confirms appendicitis, she said. There is significant swelling. We are looking at a possible perforation. How fast? Within the hour. If it ruptures fully, we are dealing with peritonitis. I nodded. I am a nurse. I know what peritonitis means. Infection spreading through the abdominal cavity. Sepsis risk. Organ failure if left untreated. I had seen it in patients. I never expected to be one. But I was not thinking about infection rates. I was thinking about Lily. Home. Asleep. Alone in her bed with the purple comforter. The nightlight shaped like a moon. The neighbor's cat probably sitting on the porch outside her window. Mrs. Patterson was 74, on blood pressure meds. She could not drive at night. She could barely stay awake past 9. Becca stood in the corner of the exam room. She had followed me down from the unit. "What do you need?" she asked. "I need someone at my house in the next 30 minutes, I said. "Lily cannot wake up alone." I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking. I scrolled to Mom's contact. Hit call. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5, 6. She picked up on the 6th ring. Her voice was thick with sleep. "Fiona, it is 2 in the morning. Mom, I am in the ER. My appendix is rupturing. I need you to go to my house and be with Lily." Silence. Then a rustle. She was sitting up in bed. "Tonight?" The clock on the ER wall said 2:14. I stared at it. 2:14 in the morning, and my mother said tonight, like I was asking her to reschedule a lunch. "Mom, my appendix is about to rupture. I need surgery in the next hour." "I heard you, Fiona, but the concert is tomorrow. I need my sleep. It is a 3-hour drive to the venue, and I cannot be exhausted." I closed my eyes, opened them. The fluorescent light above me was buzzing. "Mom, Lily is home alone." "She is 8, Fiona. She sleeps through the night." I heard muffled talking in the background. Dad's voice. Mom covered the receiver, but I caught pieces. "She wants us to come right now." "For what? Her stomach or something?" Dad took the phone. His voice was flat and half asleep. "Fiona, can't you call a neighbor? Lily's not a baby. She can stay with someone on the street." "Dad, it is 2 in the morning. I cannot call a neighbor at 2 in the morning for something like this." "Well, your mother has been planning this concert for over a year. We are both tired. Can't the hospital send someone?" Mom took the phone back. I could hear her adjusting her pillow. "Fiona, listen to me. You always figure it out. You always do. Call a friend. Call that girl you work with. I will check on you tomorrow after the show." The line went quiet. Not disconnected. Just quiet. Like she was waiting for me to agree. "Okay, Mom." I hung up, set the phone face down on the hospital bed. The nurse standing in the doorway asked if I was okay. I said yes. I said it the way I said it at every family dinner, every appointment, every holiday where I carried every bag and washed every dish and drove every mile. I said yes because that was the only word they ever wanted to hear. Becca was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. She had heard enough. "They are not coming," she said. Not a question. "No." "For a concert?" "Taylor Swift, Eras Tour, Section 112, Row F." Becca stared at me for 3 seconds. Then she pulled out her phone. "My cousin Marisol runs an overnight care nurse service. They do emergency placements. I am calling her right now." She walked into the hallway. I heard her voice through the curtain, fast and low. She came back in less than 5 minutes. "Done. Her name is Andrea. She will be at your house by 3. She has your address. She handles kids all the time. Lily will think it is a sleepover." "How much?" $280 for the night." I gave Becca my debit card number from memory. She texted it to Marisol. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling tiles. 47 of them. I counted because that is what I do when I am trying not to scream. The anesthesiologist came in at 2:31. I signed consent forms with a hand that would not stop shaking. The surgical nurse fastened the hospital wristband around my wrist. I looked at it. My name, my date of birth. And underneath, in the emergency contact field, Lily Yeager. Not my mother, not my father. My 8-year-old daughter. The only person in my family who had never once made me prove I mattered. They wheeled me into the operating room at 2:44. Becca squeezed my hand in the hallway. "Lily is fine," she said. "You are going to be fine." The lights above me were very bright. The anesthesia started as a warmth in my arm. My last thought before I went under was simple and clear. My parents chose Taylor Swift. My coworker chose me. If you have ever been the person everyone calls last but needs first, I see you. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment. Have you ever had to handle an emergency completely alone because the people who should have been there just were not? I read every single one. Now, back to what happened when I woke up. I woke up in recovery at 5:40 in the morning, groggy, dry mouth. The pain in my abdomen had been replaced by a dull, heavy ache and the pull of surgical tape. Becca was sitting in the chair beside my bed with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Appendix was perforated, she said. Dr. Singh said another hour and you would have been looking at peritonitis. You are lucky. Lily? Andrea got there at 2:58. Lily woke up once, saw Andrea, accepted the explanation that Mommy had a work emergency, and this nice lady was here for a sleepover. Went right back to sleep. I exhaled. It hurt. Everything hurt. But Lily was safe. I reached for my phone on the bedside tray. The screen lit up. No texts from Mom, no missed calls from Dad. Nothing. One text from Karen, sent at 7:22 in the morning. Mom said you had some stomach thing. Hope you feel better. Mackenzie is so excited for tomorrow. A smiley face emoji. A musical note emoji. I read it twice. My sister knew I was in the hospital. She called it some stomach thing. She followed it with an emoji about a concert. I set the phone face down on the bed. Becca watched me. She did not say anything. She had been a nurse long enough to know when someone needed silence. I lay there for a long time. The room was quiet except for the heart monitor and the hum of the air vent above my head. The refusal was bad. I could almost rationalize the refusal. They were tired. The tickets were expensive. People make selfish choices at 2 in the morning, but the silence after, the absolute unbothered silence, that was the part I could not explain away. I was discharged Saturday morning. Against medical advice, I drove myself home. The surgeon said someone should drive me. I told her someone would. There was no one. Lily ran to the door when I walked in. She hugged my legs and I winced because the incision pulled, but I hugged her back hard enough that she would not notice. Mom, the nurse lady made pancakes. She was so nice. Good. I am glad, baby. Andrea had left a note on the counter. Lily is wonderful. She read me a chapter from her book before bed. Call if you need anything. She had also washed the dishes. A stranger washed my dishes the night my parents chose a concert. I sat down on the couch with a pillow against my stomach. Lily brought me water without being asked. She pulled a blanket off the back of the recliner and draped it over my legs. Are you sick, Mommy? I had a small surgery. I am going to be sore for a few days. Okay, I will be quiet. She went to her room. I picked up my phone. Mom had posted an Instagram story. 6 photos. The first was a mirror selfie. Sparkly top. Hoop earrings. Caption, about to live our best lives. The second was Mom and Mackenzie in matching friendship bracelets. Karen had commented, you two are goals. The third was a selfie inside the arena. I could see the seat number on the armrest behind them. Section 112, row F. Same seats she had shown me in the car 4 days ago. Same seats that cost $900 each. I screenshotted every photo. Not out of spite. I screenshotted them because I needed proof that I was not making this up. That my mother really did go. That Saturday, while my mother danced to Taylor Swift, I sat on my couch with surgical tape on my stomach and made a list. The list started as a way to stay awake. I was on the couch with my laptop balanced on a pillow because I could not sit upright without the incision pulling. Lily was in her room, drawing. The house was quiet. I opened a spreadsheet. Column A, what I did for Mom. Column B, what I did for Dad. Column C, what I did for Karen. I typed fast. Each entry had a date, a description, and an estimated time. Mom, 26 cardiology appointments in 2 years. Average 45 minutes driving each way, plus wait time. Total, roughly 78 hours just in the car. Dad, 14 VA disability claim submissions. Each one took 2 to 4 hours of paperwork, phone calls, online portal navigation. Total, roughly 42 hours. Karen, 2 full tax returns. I spent a weekend each April gathering her 1099 forms, her deductions, her mileage logs. She never organized anything. I did it from scratch. Estimated value if she hired a CPA, $1,200 per return. $2,400 total. There were other things. Grocery runs when Mom could not drive after a procedure. An afternoon spent setting up Dad's new phone because he threw the manual away. The time I rescheduled Karen's car inspection because she forgot, and her registration was about to expire. I totaled it up. Over 400 hours. Over $8,000 in estimated service value. In 2 years. I stared at those numbers. 400 hours. $8,000. And they could not give me one night. I saved the spreadsheet. Named it family_labor_log.xlsx. Closed the laptop. Set it on the coffee table. 400 hours. That is what I was worth to them. Less than 2 concert tickets. I did not cry. I had stopped crying about my family a long time ago, but I did pick up my phone and search for attorneys in Dayton who handled family law. Monday morning. I was still on medical leave. The surgeon had cleared me for light activity but said no lifting, no driving more than 15 minutes, and absolutely no 12-hour shifts for at least 2 weeks. My phone rang at 8:45. It was my supervisor, Donna. "Fiona, I need to talk to you about something. Your mother called the nurse station this morning." I sat up too fast. The incision burned. "She called the unit?" "Twice. The first time she said you were having some kind of emotional crisis and asked us to keep an eye on you. She said you had been ignoring the family and she was worried about your mental state." I pressed my palm flat against my stomach. The surgical tape pulled. "The second time," Donna continued, "she asked the charge nurse whether you were on something, whether you had access to medications that might explain your behavior. My mother had called my workplace. She had told my colleagues, people I work with in a pediatric ICU, people who trust me with the lives of children, that I was unstable, that I might be abusing medication. Donna, I am recovering from an emergency appendectomy. I have not spoken to my mother because she refused to watch my daughter the night of my surgery." Donna paused. "I believe you. I just needed to hear it from you. But Fiona, this cannot happen again. If she calls the unit again, I have to document it." I said I understood. I hung up. Becca texted me 2 minutes later. "Your mom called twice. Second time she told the desk she was worried you were having a breakdown." Direct quote. "My daughter has always been dramatic. I am worried she is having a breakdown." That is when I knew this was not about a concert anymore. Tuesday. I was eating soup on the couch when a text came in from Aunt June. Aunt June was Dad's sister. 64, retired teacher. The kind of woman who never took sides because she believed every story had 2 tellings. She had been at every family dinner for as long as I could remember, always the one pouring iced tea and changing the subject when voices got too loud. Her text said, "Thought you should see this, honey. I am sorry." Below it was a screenshot, a group text. Karen, Mom, and 2 of our cousins from Cincinnati. Karen had written, "Fiona is being ridiculous about the concert thing. She is a nurse. She handles emergencies every day. Now she is acting like we abandoned her? Give me a break." Mom replied, "She has always been like this. Needs to be the center of attention." One of the cousins wrote, "Yikes. Is she okay?" Karen, "She is fine. She is just mad because Mom did not drop everything for her one time." I read the messages 3 times. I saved the screenshots. Then I scrolled down. There was one more message in the chain. Aunt June had almost not forwarded it. She told me later she went back and forth for an hour before deciding I needed to see it. It was from Mom, sent at 9:47 on a Sunday night, 2 days after the concert. I read it. Then I read it again. Then I set the phone down on the couch cushion next to me and stared at the wall for a very long time. That message, the one Aunt June almost kept to herself, is the reason I called a lawyer the next morning. The message said, "Honestly, if Fiona wants to play victim, let her. Lily can come live with us when Fiona burns out. She is a single mom on night shifts. It is only a matter of time." I read it 4 times. Each time, the words meant exactly the same thing. My mother was not just dismissing me. She was positioning herself. She was laying the groundwork, in writing, in front of family members, for a narrative in which I was too unstable, too overworked, too alone to raise my own child. And when I inevitably collapsed under the weight of everything I was carrying, she would be there, ready. With open arms and a concerned face and a story about how she had tried to help, but I pushed her away. I had seen this before. In the pediatric ward, parents building a case, grandparents making phone calls, lawyers pulling records. I knew what documentation looked like because I had been on the other side of it, writing incident reports, noting behaviors, filing with social workers. My mother was not a lawyer. She did not know the word documentation, but she was doing it anyway, one group text at a time. I looked at my wrist. The hospital wristband was still there. I had not taken it off. Below my name, in small print, Lily Yeager, emergency contact. I picked up my phone and searched for the number I had saved the day before. Rachel Dunn, attorney, family law and civil disputes. She answered on the second ring. My name is Fiona Yeager. I need a cease and desist letter sent to my mother, and I need to know my rights as a custodial parent. You always figure it out, Fiona. That is what Mom had said on the phone that night. She was right. I was about to. Rachel Dunn's office was on the second floor of a converted Victorian house on 3rd Street. Wood floors, filing cabinets, a framed law degree from Ohio State behind her desk. I brought everything. The screenshots from the group chat, the timeline of Mom's calls to my hospital, the spreadsheet of 400 hours, the Instagram posts. She read through it all in silence. She asked 3 questions. Then she leaned back in her chair. The group chat message is concerning, she said. It is not a formal custody petition, but it shows intent. She is building a narrative in a semi-public forum that you are unfit. Combined with the calls to your employer, which could constitute workplace harassment or defamation, you have a legitimate basis for a cease and desist. What does that actually do? It tells her, formally and legally, to stop. Stop contacting your workplace. Stop making statements about your fitness as a parent. Stop implying she has any claim to custody of your daughter. And if she does not stop, then we escalate. Restraining order, defamation claim, formal response to any custody action. I signed the engagement letter. The consultation costs $350. Rachel said she would draft the letter within the week and send it certified mail. I drove home. Lily was at school. The house was quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened a new Google Doc. I titled it, Incident Log, Yeager Family. Entry 1, February 14th, 2:14 in the morning. Called parents from ER, requested emergency childcare for minor child Lily. Request denied. I typed every incident. Dated, timed, detailed. I did not want revenge. I wanted a paper trail. I stopped answering calls. I stopped answering texts. I stopped driving Mom to cardiology. I stopped managing Dad's VA paperwork. I stopped everything. Day 1. Mom texted twice. Call me when you get a chance. Fiona. Day 2. Nothing. Day 3. Mom texted 11 times. Why won't you call me back? This is childish, Fiona. Your father is upset. I don't understand what's happening. Are you punishing us for one night? We are your parents. Fine, be that way. Day 4. Dad called once. I let it ring. Day 5. Karen texted. Mom is really upset. Can you just call her? It is not that serious. You had a surgery, you are fine now. Can we please move on? I read it. Did not reply. Day 7. Dad left a voicemail. His voice was quiet and tired. Fiona, your mother has been crying all week. You are making this worse than it needs to be. Just call her. We can talk about it. I did not call. Lily noticed. Of course she noticed. She was 8, not blind. Are we seeing Grandma this weekend? Not this time, sweetheart. How come? Grandma and I need a little break. Like a timeout? Something like that. She went back to her coloring book. She did not ask again for 3 days. The silence was louder than any argument. I had never gone more than 2 days without talking to my mother. Even when I lived in Columbus, we spoke on the phone every other day. She told me about her shows. I told her about Lily's school projects. It was routine. It was the background hum of a family. Now the hum was gone. And by day 10, the voicemails stopped. But the problems had just started. Day 12. A Wednesday. Rachel Dunn called to confirm the letter had been sent. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. The cease and desist was 2 pages. Single-spaced. Legal letterhead from Dunn and Associates. It stated, in precise language, that Diane Yeager was to immediately cease all contact with Fiona Yeager's place of employment. That she was to refrain from making any public or semi-public statements regarding Fiona's mental health, parenting capacity, or fitness as a custodial parent. That any further attempts to contact Fiona's workplace or suggest custodial interference would result in formal legal action, including but not limited to a restraining order and a civil defamation claim. The green certified mail card came back signed the next day. Mom had signed it herself. By Thursday evening, my phone had 17 missed calls from numbers I recognized. Karen texted first, all caps. A cease and desist? From your own mother? What is wrong with you? I blocked Karen's number. Mom called from Dad's phone, then from the house landline, then from Karen's phone. I blocked all 3. Dad did not text. He never texted. But Aunt June called and said he had been sitting in the garage for 2 hours, staring at the wall. He does not know what to do, June said. He knew what to do 3 weeks ago. He told me to call a neighbor. June was quiet for a moment. I am not defending him, honey. I am just telling you. 12 days of silence. 1 certified letter. And suddenly, I was the villain. That is the thing about boundaries. When you have never had them, the first one feels like an earthquake to the people standing on the other side. 2 weeks without Fiona. That is how long it took for things to start falling apart. Mom missed her cardiology appointment. She did not know the address by heart. I had always driven her. She went to the wrong medical complex. There are 2 in Dayton with similar names. Sat in the waiting room for 40 minutes, and was told her doctor was in the other building across town. She missed the appointment entirely. Dad's VA claim deadline came and went. He did not know the paperwork was due. He did not know which forms to use. He called the VA hotline and spent 3 hours on hold before being transferred to the wrong department. The claim was flagged as delinquent. Karen called a CPA for the first time in her life. The bill was $600. $600, Aunt June told me on the phone. She almost laughed. For what you did for free. June had been giving me updates every few days. Not gossip, information. She was the only family member I had not blocked, and she understood why. Your mother told everyone at church that you are going through something, June said. She is using the same line with everyone. Fiona is having a hard time. We are giving her space. She cannot admit what actually happened, so she rewrote it. I know. What are you going to do? I had been thinking about it for 3 days. I had the spreadsheet. I had the screenshots. I had the Instagram posts. I had the incident log. And I had a date on the calendar. I am going to Sunday dinner. June was quiet. Sunday dinner, I said. 3 weeks to the day since my appendix ruptured. Every single family member will be there. Fiona, are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything. I know what you are thinking. Sunday dinner? Really? After everything? Trust me, I asked myself the same thing. But here is the thing about quiet people. When we finally speak up, we make sure there are witnesses. Hit subscribe if you want to see how this dinner goes. It is about to get very real. The days before Sunday were quiet. I was almost fully recovered. The incision had closed. The soreness had faded to a dull reminder whenever I twisted wrong. Aunt June kept me updated. Mom rescheduled the cardiology appointment but needed Karen to drive her. Karen complained the entire time. I have showings on Tuesdays, Mom. I can't be doing this every 6 weeks. Dad tried to file his VA claim online. He created an account, forgot the password immediately, called the reset line, got locked out for 24 hours, and then called June in a panic. "I don't know how Fiona did this," he told her. June said he sounded like a man who had lost his GPS in the middle of a desert. Karen's new CPA sent her a list of documents she needed. Karen did not have half of them. She called Mom. Mom did not have them either. They were all in a folder on my laptop. A folder labeled Karen Taxes. $600. That is what it cost to replace me. And that was just for Karen. Mom had also posted on Instagram. Not the usual content. She had deleted every Eras Tour photo, every picture of her and Mackenzie at the arena, every sparkly selfie, every friendship bracelet shot. Gone. In their place was a single post, a sunset over a field. No caption. "She knows," June said. "She won't say it, but she knows." I did not reply. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a manila folder, a printer, and the spreadsheet that documented 400 hours of free labor. I printed the spreadsheet. I printed the group chat screenshots. I printed the Instagram posts. All the ones she had deleted, because I had saved them. I was not going to Sunday dinner to make peace. I was going to tell the truth. Saturday night. Lily was asleep. I sat at the kitchen table with everything spread out. Page 1, the spreadsheet. 400 hours, $8,000. Every line item dated. Page 2, the group chat screenshots. Karen's messages. Mom's messages. The one about Lily. Page 3, the Instagram printouts. 47 photos of Mackenzie. 3 of Lily. The Eras Tour selfies. Section 112. Row F, visible in the background. I did not print the cease and desist letter. That was between lawyers. It had done its job. The letter had drawn the legal line. Sunday was personal. I put everything in a manila folder. Brown, plain. The kind you buy in a 10-pack at the office supply store. I practiced what I would say. Not a speech. Fiona Yeager does not make speeches. I practiced the facts. Numbers. Dates. Direct quotes. Clinical. Accurate. I wanted to be the nurse, not the patient. I thought. Calm. Precise. No raised voice. No tears. I called Aunt June. "I am coming tomorrow, don't tell them." "I won't." "But Fiona, everyone will be there. Your Uncle Hank, Linda from church, the whole table." "I know, that is the point." June paused. "Be careful." "I will be honest, that is the most careful thing I have ever done." I looked at the C&D envelope still sitting on my kitchen counter. Green certified mail sticker on the front. Legal firm return address in the corner. I picked it up, held it for a moment, and set it back down. The letter had done its job. Sunday was mine. I put the manila folder in my bag, zipped it shut, went to bed. For the first time in 3 weeks, I slept through the night. Sunday morning. Clear sky. March in Ohio is unpredictable, but that day was sharp and bright. Like the weather had decided to cooperate. I dressed Lily in her favorite dress, yellow with white daisies. She had not worn it since Christmas. "Are we really going to Grandma's?" "Yes, baby." "Is the timeout over?" "We will see." I buckled her into the car seat and drove the 14 minutes to my parents' house, the same house I grew up in. White siding, green shutters. The rose bushes along the front walk that Mom used to make me water every Saturday. I parked on the street, saw the cars, Karen's silver SUV in the driveway, Aunt June's blue sedan behind it, Uncle Hank's red truck at the curb, Linda's white minivan across the street. Linda was the pastor's wife at the Methodist church. She had known our family for 20 years. Full house. Exactly as I expected. I turned off the engine. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not from fear. From adrenaline. The same feeling I got before a code in the ICU. When everything narrows to the next 60 seconds and you know exactly what needs to happen. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt. "Mommy, are you mad at Grandma?" I looked at her in the rearview mirror. Purple backpack on her lap, hair in 2 braids I had done that morning. No, sweetheart, I am not mad. I am just going to tell the truth. Is the truth going to make Grandma sad? Maybe, but the truth is still the truth. She nodded like that made perfect sense. 8 years old, turkey sandwiches and purple marker notes and more wisdom than half the adults in that house. I picked up my bag. We walked to the front door. I rang the bell. The door opened. Dad. His face went white. Not red, not surprised. White. Like he had been expecting this and dreading it at the same time. Fiona? Hi, Dad. He stepped back. I walked in. Lily slipped past me and ran toward the kitchen. Aunt June, do you have cookies? The living room was exactly as I remembered. Same brown couch, same family photos on the mantel, same clock ticking on the wall above the TV. Everyone was already seated or standing near the dining table. Mom stood up from the couch. She was wearing the cream cardigan she always wore on Sundays. Her eyes were red. She had been crying already, or she had been ready to cry. With Mom, it was hard to tell the difference. Fiona. Her voice cracked. Oh my God. Come here, honey. She opened her arms. I did not move. I am not here for a hug, Mom. The room went quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the clock, where you can hear the ice settling in someone's glass. Karen appeared in the kitchen doorway, dish towel over her shoulder, arms crossed. Oh, so now you show up? I did not look at Karen. I looked at the dining table, mashed potatoes, roast chicken, grandmother's tablecloth, the white linen one with the lace edges that came out every Sunday. Same tablecloth from every holiday, every birthday, every family argument that got smoothed over by dessert. Today, it was not getting smoothed over. Fiona, Mom said again. Her arms were still open. Please, we can talk about this. We are going to talk about it, I said. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I set the folder on the dining table, right next to the mashed potatoes. The manila folder looked plain and ordinary against Grandmother's white lace tablecloth, but it was the heaviest thing in the room. I opened it. Page 1 was on top. The spreadsheet. This is a log, I said. My voice was even, level. The same voice I used when I briefed a surgeon on a patient's vitals. A log of every errand, every appointment, every service I have provided for this family over the past 2 years. Mom sat down slowly. Karen stayed in the doorway. Uncle Hank leaned forward. Linda folded her hands in her lap. 26 cardiology visits, I said. 45 minutes each way. That is 78 hours of driving? I looked at Mom. For you. She opened her mouth. I kept going. 14 VA disability claim submissions, an average of 3 hours each. That is 42 hours of paperwork and phone calls. I looked at Dad. For you. Dad stared at the table. 2 years of tax returns. $1,200 each if you hired a professional. $2,400 total. I looked at Karen. For you. Karen's arms dropped to her sides. The dish towel slid off her shoulder. Grocery runs, phone setups, car inspections, insurance calls, over 400 hours, over $8,000 in estimated value. I closed the spreadsheet page and set it flat on the table where everyone could see the numbers. That is what I have done for this family. In 2 years. For free. Without being asked. Without being thanked. Uncle Hank picked up the spreadsheet. Read it. Set it down. Looked at Dad. I am not here to argue, I said. I am here to show you what you lost. I turned to face the full table. Aunt June was sitting at the far end with Lily on her lap, feeding her a cookie. Uncle Hank was on my left, Linda on my right, Mom and Dad across from me. Karen still standing. 3 weeks ago, I said, my appendix ruptured at 2 a.m. I was at work. I collapsed in the hallway of the pediatric ICU. The ER doctor told me I needed surgery within the hour or I would develop peritonitis. Linda put her hand over her mouth. My daughter was home, asleep, alone. My neighbor is 74 and cannot drive at night. I had no one. I paused. Let the room sit with that, I called my parents from the ER at 2:14 in the morning. I asked them to come to my house and stay with Lily. Mom, Fiona, this is not the place for... They said no. I said it clear. Steady. They had Taylor Swift tickets. Eras Tour. $1,800. Section 112. Row F. The concert was the next day, and Mom needed her sleep. Uncle Hank set down his fork. My father got on the phone and said, I looked at Dad. Can't you call a neighbor? Lily's not a baby. Linda turned to look at Dad. He did not look up. And my mother said this. I kept my voice flat, clinical. You always figure it out, Fiona. You always do. Silence. The clock ticked. Someone's ice shifted in their glass. I figured it out. I called a night nurse from my hospital bed. She arrived at my house at 2:58 in the morning. She cost me $280. My co-worker arranged it because my own parents would not come. The phone call lasted 37 seconds. That is how long it took for my parents to choose a concert over their granddaughter. I turned to page 2 in the folder, the group chat screenshots. After the surgery, I stopped calling. I needed to recover. I needed to think. And while I was doing that, this is what was happening behind my back. I held up the printout. Karen's group text. Mom's replies. Karen wrote this to our cousins. I read it aloud. Fiona is being ridiculous about the concert thing. She is a nurse. She handles emergencies every day. Now she is acting like we abandoned her. Give me a break. Karen took a step forward. That was a private conversation. It was a group text with 4 people. I did not raise my voice. That is not private. That is an audience. I read Mom's reply. She has always been like this. Needs to be the center of attention. Mom covered her face with both hands. But this is the one I want everyone in this room to hear. I held up the last screenshot. This is what my mother wrote on a Sunday night, 9 days after my surgery. I read it word by word. If Fiona wants to play victim, let her. Lily can come live with us when Fiona burns out. She is a single mom on night shifts. It is only a matter of time. The room did not breathe. Karen lunged for the papers. I stepped back. She grabbed air. There is more, I said. But that is the one I wanted you all to hear. My mother, in writing, told our family that she is waiting for me to fail so she can take my daughter. Pastor's wife Linda stood up from the table. She looked at Mom. She looked at me. Then she sat back down and folded her hands in her lap. Her lips were pressed into a thin, tight line. That is when Mom started crying. But not the kind of crying you feel sorry for. Mom's crying was loud, theatrical. The kind of crying that fills a room and demands that everyone stop what they are doing and tend to her. You don't understand, she sobbed. None of you understand. She looked around the table, looking for allies, looking for someone to say, it's okay, Diane. Nobody said it. Mackenzie was choosing Barb over me, every holiday, every weekend. Barb got the sleepovers. Barb got the phone calls. That concert was the first time Mackenzie picked me, the first time in 3 years she wanted to spend a whole day with me. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. For a moment, one single moment, I saw it, the fear underneath. A grandmother terrified of being forgotten by a 16-year-old girl who had a dozen people competing for her attention. It was human. It was real. It almost made me feel something. Then she turned to me. And now you are turning the whole family against me because of one night? One night, Fiona. I have given you everything. I raised you. I fed you. I kept a roof over your head for 18 years. And you are going to destroy this family over concert tickets? The room was watching. Everyone was watching. I waited until she was done. Then I spoke. It was not one night, Mom. My voice did not waver. It was every night I drove you to the doctor, every form I filled out for Dad, every tax return for Karen. You did not forget me for one night. You forgot me for 2 years. Mom stared at me. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I am not turning anyone against you. I am just reading what you wrote, out loud, in your own words. The clock ticked. Nobody moved. Karen broke first. "This is so typical," she said. Her voice was sharp and rising. "So typical Fiona, making everything about herself. You are a nurse. You do this for strangers every single day. But when it is your own family, suddenly it is the end of the world?" Uncle Hank looked at her. "Karen, she was in emergency surgery. She could have called someone else." "She did," I said. "I called a night nurse. From my hospital bed. It cost me $280. The room went still again. "Also, Karen," I kept my tone the same. Flat. Factual. "I know about the phone calls." Karen blinked. "What phone calls?" "Mom called my hospital. Twice. She told my supervisor, the person who oversees my ability to work in a pediatric ICU, that I was having a mental breakdown." I turned to the room. "She told my charge nurse, and I am quoting directly, 'My daughter has always been dramatic. I am worried she is having a breakdown.'" Linda spoke for the first time. "Diane, you called her job?" Mom's crying shifted. It got quieter, smaller. The performative edge fell away, and what was left was something closer to panic. "I was worried about her," Mom whispered. "You were not worried about me. You were worried about yourself. You were worried that I would tell people what happened, so you called first and told them I was crazy." Karen turned to Mom. "You told me you just checked on her." "I did check on her." "You called her boss and said she was on drugs." Mom's face crumpled. Karen's face went red. Dad stared at a spot on the tablecloth and did not blink. The family was splitting in real time, and I had not raised my voice once. Everyone looked at Dad. He had not spoken since the doorbell. He was sitting at the head of the table with his hands flat on the tablecloth, staring at his plate of untouched roast chicken. "Gerald," Uncle Hank said, "you got anything to say?" Dad cleared his throat. "Fiona, can we talk about this privately?" "No, Dad. You had a chance to talk privately, at 2:14 in the morning, when I called from the ER. I held his gaze. "You told me Lily was not a baby. You told me she could stay with a neighbor, and then you went back to bed." Uncle Hank's jaw tightened. "Gerald, she is 8 years old." "I was half asleep," Dad said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I did not know how serious it was. I told you my appendix was rupturing. I told you I needed surgery within the hour. You said call a neighbor and handed the phone back to Mom." Dad closed his eyes. His hands pressed flat against the tablecloth, hard enough that his knuckles went white. "Your mother said you would be fine." "I know what Mom said." I looked at him. Steady. "Mom said I always figure it out." And she was right. I paused. Let the silence hold. "I figured it out, Dad. I figured out that in this family, reliable means replaceable. I figured out that 400 hours of free labor and 26 drives to the cardiologist count for less than 2 concert tickets. I figured out that when I needed someone at 2 in the morning, my coworker showed up and my parents did not." My voice stayed level. I had not raised it once. Mom was crying. Karen was fuming. Dad was staring at the tablecloth. But I was done talking about what happened. Now I was going to talk about what comes next. I closed the folder. I set it on the table. I stood straight. "I am not here to punish anyone," I said. "I am here to tell you what is going to change." The room waited. Aunt June had her arm around Lily in the kitchen doorway. Lily was eating a cookie, watching me with big eyes. "I will not be driving Mom to appointments anymore. If you need a ride, call Karen. Or call an Uber. Or call the medical transport service your insurance covers. I will give you the number." Mom's crying had stopped. She was just staring. "I will not be filing Dad's VA claims. The VA has a toll-free helpline. I will write it down for you before I leave." Dad did not look up. "I will not be doing Karen's taxes. You have a CPA now. She charges $600. That is the actual cost of what I was doing for free." Karen opened her mouth, closed it. "And if you want to see Lily," I let that land, "you will call me first. Not text. Not show up. Not send Karen. You will call me, and I will decide. You can't keep my granddaughter from me, Mom said. Her voice was raw. I am not keeping her from you, Mom. You kept yourself from her. I held her eyes. On a Saturday night. In section 112, row F. The room was perfectly still. Uncle Hank nodded once. Linda had tears on her cheeks. Karen was gripping the back of a chair. I picked up Lily. She wrapped her arms around my neck. I walked to the front door. Fiona, Aunt June said from behind me. I turned. She nodded. Just a nod. Quiet. Solid. Drive safe, honey. I carried Lily to the car, buckled her in. She fell asleep before we reached the end of the street. The folder stayed on the dining table, right next to the mashed potatoes, on top of Grandmother's white lace tablecloth. I drove home in silence. That night, Aunt June called. You should know what happened after you left, she said. Karen grabbed her purse and walked out about 2 minutes after you did, slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. And Mom? She sat at the table for a long time, did not eat, did not talk. Your father went to the garage. Linda said a prayer and excused herself. Hank and I cleaned up. Did Mom say anything? She picked up the folder, read through every page. Then she set it back down and said, I did not know she kept track. That is all she said. I sat on my couch in the dark. Lily was asleep in her room. The house was quiet. The next day, Mom's Instagram changed. She deleted every remaining post. Not just the Eras Tour photos. Everything. Her account went blank. A white square with no bio. 2 days later, Dad called. Not from home. From a payphone at the hardware store. His cell was dead. He did not know how to charge it without me setting it up. He left a voicemail. Short. I am sorry, kiddo. I should have come that night. I know that now. I should have put on my shoes and driven to your house. I am sorry. I listened to it sitting on the edge of my bed. I played it twice. Then I saved it. Sorry was a start. But I was not ready to hear it yet. 2 days later, a text came in from an unknown number. Aunt Fiona, it is Mackenzie. I just found out what happened. Mom told me the whole thing. Not her version, the real version. Aunt June called her. A pause. 3 dots blinking. Then, I am so sorry. I did not know about any of it. Grandma never told me why you stopped coming around. She just said you were busy. If I had known, I would have told Grandma to go to your house. I would have stayed with Lily myself. I babysit all the time. I am 16. I sat with that message for a long time. Then I typed, I know you would have, sweetheart. This is not about you. I know, but I still feel bad. Don't. You did not do anything wrong. I set the phone down. Mackenzie did not choose to be the favorite. She was just a kid standing in the spotlight her grandmother had pointed at her. She did not ask for the bracelets or the Instagram posts or the front row seats. She was 16. She wanted to see Taylor Swift with her grandma. There was nothing wrong with that. The wrong part was everything else. 3 months later. Things had changed. Mom called once a month. Brief. Polite. How is Lily? She is good. Okay. Give her a hug for me. That was it. No guilt trips. No tears. No group texts. The cease and desist had drawn a line, and for the first time in her life, Mom was standing behind it. Dad mailed a birthday card for Lily in April. Inside was a $50 bill and a note written in his own handwriting. Shaky, slanted, misspelled. Happy birthday, Lilybug. Love, Grandpa. It was the first card in 3 years that was not signed by Mom. Karen hired the CPA permanently. She had not spoken to me directly since Sunday dinner. I did not expect her to. Some bridges do not rebuild. They just stop burning. I joined a Wednesday night yoga class at the community center, my first regular social activity in 2 years. I met a woman named Patty who also worked nights at a hospital. We got coffee after class sometimes. One evening, cleaning out a drawer, I found the hospital wristband. My name, my date of birth. Lily Yeager in the emergency contact field. I held it for a moment. Then I placed it in Lily's baby memory box, next to her first pair of shoes and her coming home outfit. Some things you keep. Not because they are precious, because they are proof. Lily asked me once, a few weeks after the dinner. We were eating mac and cheese at the kitchen table. Just us. Does Grandma still love us? I set my fork down. Yes, she does. But love and showing up are two different things, and you deserve both. She nodded, took another bite. I think so too. I spent 32 years being the person who figured it out. The fixer, the driver, the one who filed the forms and made the calls and showed up even when nobody showed up for me. The night my appendix ruptured, I figured out the most important thing I have ever learned. The people who love you do not make you prove it from a hospital bed. You always figure it out, Fiona. Mom was right. I finally did. That is my story. One phone call, one concert, one dinner table. If this reminded you to stop carrying people who refuse to carry you, share this video. Drop a comment, hit subscribe. I will see you in the next one. My name is Iris Outen. I'm 33, and in 7 months I buried both of my parents. I sold our old family house in Greenville, North Carolina, and bought a small condo on the coast, 2 blocks from the water. The morning of day 2, before I'd even unpacked the kitchen, my adopted brother Trent walked in, lifted my keys off the entry table and slid them into his jacket pocket. "You don't need this house," he said. "Tomorrow I'm traveling with my wife's family. I can drop you off at a shelter." I stood there. I didn't argue. 1 hour later, I texted him 3 words. "Look inside Dad's lockbox." He called me back in 4 minutes. But what happened in the 28 days after that, that was the part nobody, including me, saw coming. Welcome back to the channel. This is a place for women who set boundaries the right way, with documents, dignity, and the courage to stay calm in the rooms where everyone else is yelling. If you've ever been the one who showed up while the rest of your family just collected, this story is for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and stay with me. What happens at that beach reception, you're going to want to see. The 14 months before my mother died were the longest 14 months of my life. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time the scans came back, which meant treatment, but not a cure. I asked my boss at Pruitt and Hayes, the probate firm where I'd worked as a paralegal for 10 years, if I could shift to remote. He said yes the same hour. So I packed my laptop into the guest room of the house on Elm Street and moved back in. My mother's name was Helen. She'd been a kindergarten teacher for 27 years before the diagnosis. We turned my old childhood bedroom into a hospice room. The hospital bed came on a Wednesday. The oxygen concentrator hummed at the foot of it for the next year and change. I learned how to swap a cannula at 3 in the morning without turning on the overhead light. I learned which Walmart had the cheapest case of Ensure. I learned that my mother could squeeze my hand even when she couldn't form words. My brother Trent visited 3 times. I want to be specific about that, because for a long time afterward people would say, "Family processes grief differently." 3 visits in 14 months, about 2 hours each. His wife Whit never came inside. Once she dropped him in the driveway and waited in the car with the engine running. He stayed 40 minutes that day. I wasn't angry then. I was too tired to be angry. Anger takes energy, and I didn't have any. I had a yellow legal pad on the kitchen counter where I wrote things like "new tubing Thursday" and "refill the anti-nausea" and "call about the catheter." And that was where my brain lived. The version of me that could feel things had been folded up and put in a drawer somewhere. I figured I'd unpack her later, when there was time. Dad died first, actually. Heart attack. Sudden, in January. He was watering the rose bushes. The neighbor found him in the grass. I drove home from work and sat with him until the funeral home came. Mom watched from the kitchen window because she was too weak to come out. She didn't cry until 2 days later, in the casket pick-out room, when she put her hand on the lid of the simple pine box and whispered, "He'd hate the brass handles." After that, it was just the 2 of us. Just me, her, the lesson plans she kept tracing with one finger, and the cancer. Mom died in October on a Tuesday morning, with her hand resting on top of mine. The hospice nurse, a soft-voiced woman named Anita, sat with me for 2 hours after the breath went out of the room. She didn't say anything. She just stayed. I'd remember her for that. The funeral was the following Saturday at Riverside Cemetery in Greenville. Light rain. 40-some people in dark coats. I'd ordered the standing sprays myself, the program leaflets, the soloist. I'd called the church. I'd written the obituary in the kitchen at 1 a.m. with a cup of tea going cold next to the laptop. Trent arrived 20 minutes late. Whit was driving, and the first thing I heard her say as they crossed the wet grass was, "I told you we should have left earlier. The parking's a nightmare." She kissed my cheek. She'd never kissed my cheek before. "Iris," she whispered, "I'm so sorry for your loss." It was the most personal sentence she'd ever spoken to me. Trent hugged me. I let him. He smelled like cologne I didn't recognize, expensive in a way that didn't fit him. He'd put on weight since the last visit, and his eyes were red. He cried at the service. Whit reached across him and patted his hand twice. After the burial, people drifted back to the house on Elm for sandwiches and coffee. I'd hired a teenage girl from the church to help refill platters. I was standing at the kitchen counter rinsing forks when Whit cornered me. She had a friend with her I hadn't met. Mid-60s, blonde bob, careful makeup. Whit introduced her as my mother, Diane Caldwell. She drove up from Wilmington just to be here. Diane took my hand in both of hers. "Sweetheart, we are so sorry." Her grip was firm. She held on a beat longer than I expected. Then Whit asked, perfectly casual, "Iris, did your mom ever say anything about her jewelry? Any of the pieces?" I set the fork I was holding into the rack. I didn't answer. I picked up the empty sandwich platter, walked it back to the dining room, and made a fresh stack. When I came back to the kitchen, Trent was standing in the hallway looking down at me. He'd come up from somewhere upstairs. From the back of the house where my dad's office was. I hadn't seen him go up. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just looking around." 3 months later, on a Friday in mid-January, we sat in the conference room of Bryson and Park, the small estates firm in downtown Greenville that had handled Mom and Dad's paperwork for the last 15 years. Tom Bryson read the will aloud. He was 72, gentle, the kind of attorney who still wore a bow tie. The will was clean and specific. The house at 1418 Elm Street, plus its contents. To me. The loan codicil, signed and notarized 14 months before Mom died, stated the bequest was made in recognition of Iris's role as primary caregiver to both parents during their final years of life. The brokerage account, the term life policy, my father's pickup, and the savings account at First Citizens, split 60-40, with the larger share going to Trent. Tom explained the dollar values were roughly equivalent once you accounted for the house's appraisal and the upkeep arrears. Roughly. The intent, he said, was balance. Trent went red across the forehead. He didn't say anything during the reading. Whit did. Her hand went up like she was in a classroom. "Mr. Bryson, sorry, just to clarify. This version is the one that's actually valid? There isn't an earlier draft?" "This is the only executed will," Tom said. "Signed July, codicil October the following year. Both notarized." Whit nodded slowly. "Got it. Just making sure." I didn't say anything in that room. I signed the acknowledgement page. I shook Tom's hand. I walked out to the parking lot with Trent and Whit 10 paces behind me. At my car, Whit caught up. She put her hand on my forearm. Her wedding ring was new, a bigger stone than I remembered. "Iris," she said in her sweetheart voice, "we should all sit down, like a family meeting. Let's be honest about how to split this so nobody feels weird." I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. "The will is what Dad wrote," I said. "I didn't write it." She gave a tight smile and let go. That afternoon, I drove back to Pruitt and Hayes and asked the receptionist to pull a certified copy of everything for me, one for the office file and one for my own. Then I drove to the SunTrust branch on Memorial Drive and opened a safety deposit box. 247. I put the copies inside and slid the drawer shut myself. In the house that night, on a hook above the kitchen sink, I noticed the small brass key to Dad's cedar lockbox. I didn't open the box. Not yet. 5 months passed. I lived in the house alone, I worked from the kitchen table. I closed Dad's office door and didn't open it. I let Mom's reading chair sit empty in the den and never sat in it. I changed the sheets on my old bed every 2 weeks because the smell of the hospice didn't leave the room until the third change. One Saturday in April, I stood in the middle of the living room with a cup of coffee in my hand and looked at the wallpaper. Pale green vines, hung in 1989. Dad had complained about it for 30 years. I realized I couldn't stay another month. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a museum I'd been working as the unpaid curator of, and I was the only visitor. I called a realtor on Monday morning, listed Wednesday, open house the following Sunday. We had 3 offers by Tuesday, and on the 4th, I accepted. A young couple, second baby on the way, the husband had grown up 2 streets over, $410,000, closing in 35 days. I didn't tell Trent until the contract was already signed. I called him from my car in the grocery store parking lot, the way you call someone you don't want to give a chance to argue. "You're selling Mom and Dad's house?" His voice tightened. "It's not Mom and Dad's anymore," I said. "It's mine, by the will, and I can't live here. I'm putting it on the market and using my share to buy a place on the coast." There was a long pause. Then I heard Whit, on the line in the background, saying something I couldn't make out. Trent muffled the phone with his palm. When he came back, he sounded different. "Honey," he said. He'd never called me honey in his life. "We need to talk about that money. Like, a real conversation. Whit and I have been thinking about a few things, and we could really use—" "I have to go," I said. "I'm at Harris Teeter." I hung up. I should have known then. Anyone with a normal sibling would have known. But I'd just spent 14 months pretending I wasn't drowning, and pretending is a habit you can't quit overnight. I just kept moving. I packed the house in 8 weeks. I picked the condo in Corolla in 3 weekends. I closed cash, $340,000, on a 1-bedroom on the 4th floor, 2 blocks from the Currituck Sound. Move-in date, the first weekend of June. I didn't open the lockbox yet. I almost did. Twice. I decided to wait until I was in the new place. The movers got it done before lunch. 8 boxes from Greenville, 2 pieces of furniture I'd kept, Mom's reading chair after all, and Dad's cedar lockbox. I'd had them load the box onto the truck personally, so nothing happened to it in transit. It had sat in the corner of his office since I was a kid. He'd built it himself in 1991 out of leftover cedar from a barn job. 22 inches long, 16 wide, 10 deep. Brass corners. A small lock he'd put in himself with a tiny brass key. The movers carried it up to the 4th floor and set it where I pointed, in the master bedroom closet on the 2nd shelf. I closed the closet door. The cedar smell stayed in the closet like a held breath. After they left, I stood on the balcony for a long time. The condo was small, 640 square feet, 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a balcony just big enough for 2 folding chairs. The water wasn't ocean exactly. It was Currituck Sound, but you could smell the salt from upstairs, and on a clear day you could see the lighthouse over at Corolla. The HOA dues were $315 a month. I'd run the numbers 4 times. I could carry it on my salary alone. I'd done it. I walked down to the beach at the end of the day. June sun, low, golden. I sat in the sand in my work pants and let the wind take my hair around, and for the first time in 5 months, for the first time since Mom, I cried. Not big, not loud, just a few minutes of leaking eyes, the kind that don't even ask permission. I felt grief, and underneath the grief, something I hadn't expected. Lightness. Like a piece of luggage I'd been carrying for years had been set down on a bench, and I could walk away if I wanted to. That night, I slept 9 hours, the first 9 straight in over a year. I'd given Trent the lobby visitor code 2 weeks earlier when he asked. He'd called offering to help me move. I'd said no, but the offer felt like effort. I told him the code anyway, in case of emergency. He'd said, "Cool, I'll save it." Tomorrow, I'd wake up free. That was what I thought. The cedar box sat in the closet. I told myself I'd open it Saturday. I had time now. Sunday morning, June 2nd. I woke up at 7, made coffee in the new percolator, and took the mug out to the balcony. The sound was glass flat. A heron stood in the shallows 200 yards out, perfectly still, doing whatever herons do at 7 in the morning. I sat in the folding chair in my robe and let the steam come off the cup. I thought, I'm going to do this every day for the rest of my life. At 9:14, a red Ford F-150 pulled into the visitor lot. I noticed because the lot was nearly empty, and because the truck stopped diagonally across 2 spaces, the way Trent always parked. I watched from the balcony. The driver's door opened. Trent got out in a polo shirt and shorts, sunglasses on his head. The passenger door opened. Whit. White capri pants, sandals, oversized purse. They walked to the building entrance. Trent punched the visitor code into the lobby keypad. I had given him that code, 2 weeks ago, in case of emergency. I watched him use it now like it was his code, like he lived here, and I felt my stomach do a small, slow turn. The knock on my door came 40 seconds later. They'd taken the elevator straight up, hadn't called from the lobby, hadn't called from the parking lot, hadn't called the night before. Just appeared. I opened the door in my robe. Trent walked past me into the living room without waiting to be invited. He looked around once, a slow scan, the way a buyer walks a house, and then he sat down in my new white linen armchair. Whit followed him in. She closed the door behind herself. She locked the deadbolt without asking. Then she gave me a smile, the soft one she'd given me at the funeral. "This is cute, Iris," Whit said. "Really cute." I should have known by the way he sat down, by the way she locked the door, by the way his sunglasses came down off his head and went onto the coffee table next to my book like he owned the surface. I poured them both coffee anyway. That's the kind of person I was on day 1 of June. Trent took the coffee. He didn't drink it. He set it on the coffee table next to his sunglasses and leaned back into my chair. "So look," he started, "Whit and I were talking last night. And honestly, Iris, this whole thing, the condo, the move, all of it, it's a lot for someone alone. You know? Like, this is a lot of square footage and a lot of monthly expense for one person who just lost her parents. 640 square feet, I said. And the math works." Whit jumped in, soft and sad. "Sweetheart, honestly, this is too much for someone alone. We've been so worried about you." Trent stood up. He walked over to the entry table. My keys were lying there in the small ceramic bowl I'd had since college. 2 keys on a small ring, front door of the unit, mailbox down in the lobby. He picked them up. He looked at them for a second. Then he opened his jacket and slid them into the inside breast pocket. Zipped the pocket closed. I watched him do all of it. "You don't need this house," Trent said. He turned to face me. He was using the voice our father had used on the dog when the dog had done something it shouldn't have. "Tomorrow I'm traveling with Whit's family. We're driving to Asheville for the week. I can drop you off at a shelter on the way out of town." Whit nodded. "Just for a couple weeks. We can figure everything out, you know, more rationally. Bart said he could help with the listing." I tilted my head. "Bart." "My brother. Realtor. He thinks we could get $380 for this place, probably more in season. Just, let us help, sweetheart." I noticed her phone screen, lit up on the arm of my couch where she'd set it. Zillow agent notification. Listing draft. Address line, 4127. Soundfront Way, Unit 412. Mine. She saw me see it. She turned the phone face down. I didn't say anything for a full beat. Then I said, "Okay." Trent looked at me. Whit looked at me. I'd surprised them both. "Okay," Trent said. "You've got the keys," I said. "I think this conversation's done." For about 30 seconds, nobody moved. I think they were waiting for me to plead, to explain, to get small. That's the script for the version of me they thought they were here to meet. The exhausted caregiver in a robe at 9 in the morning with hospice still in her hair. I think Whit had even rehearsed the next part of the conversation in the car on the way over. Mediation language, family compromise, the soft hand on the forearm. I just stood there with my coffee. Iris, Whit said carefully. We're trying to help you. I heard you, I said. Trent looked at his wife. She looked at her phone, which was still face down. He looked back at me. So you're cool with this? He said. You're cool letting us handle things for you? I think you should head out, I said. You said you're driving to Asheville tomorrow. That's a long drive. You'll want to rest tonight. Iris, honey, Whit tried again. Let me give you a hug. She moved toward me. I stepped back. Not dramatically. Just one neat step into the kitchen, hand still on the coffee mug, the counter between us now. She stopped. Okay, she said brightly, like we'd just made a deal. Okay, we'll call you tonight. We'll get this all worked out. They walked out the way they came. Trent took his sunglasses off the coffee table. Whit picked up her purse and her phone. He paused at the door, hand on the frame, like he wanted to say something paternal. He didn't think of anything. He left. The deadbolt was still locked from Whit's hand earlier. I unlocked it, opened the door, looked down the hall, and watched them walk to the elevator. He punched the button. He didn't look back. They got in. The doors closed. I shut my door. I locked the deadbolt myself this time. I walked to the kitchen drawer next to the refrigerator. In a small Ziploc bag taped to the inside back wall of the drawer was a second set of keys to the unit. I'd had them made on the day I closed. I always had a spare. 10 years at a probate firm teaches you that. I sat down. I made another coffee. Then I picked up my phone. I pulled up Trent's contact. I looked at his name. I looked at his photo. An old one. Him at 17, in a graduation gown, with his arm around my shoulders. I was 12 in that photo. I'd cropped the picture so it was just the two of us, no mom and dad in frame. I'd taken it because I'd liked having an older brother. I tapped the message box. I typed 3 words. Look inside Dad's lockbox. I read it. I sent it. 4 minutes passed. 4 minutes, 12 seconds, by the clock on the microwave. The phone vibrated on the counter. Trent's name on the screen. I let it ring. Voicemail picked up. I muted the phone. Then I called Carolyn Pruitt at her cell. Carolyn was the named partner at Pruitt and Hayes. She'd hired me 10 years before, when I was 23, and a community college legal assistant certificate had been the only line on my resume. She'd taught me how a will gets challenged, how a codicil holds, how to read a deed in under 90 seconds. She was 58, gray-haired, divorced twice, and she answered her cell on Sundays. Iris, tell me. He came over, I said. He took my keys. He said he'd drop me at a shelter. There was a brief silence on her end, the kind a lawyer makes when she's deciding whether to be a lawyer or a friend first. All right, she said. Monday morning, my office, 8:30. Bring your phone with the texts. Don't engage. Don't argue. Let it run. Already doing it, I said. That's my girl. The will copies? In 247 at SunTrust Memorial. Pull them tomorrow. Bring them up. I will. I hung up. I made a list on the yellow legal pad I'd brought up from Greenville, the pad I used to write things like New Tubing Thursday. Now I wrote, Monday, SunTrust 247, Carolyn, 8:30. Concierge, do not let tea up. Rekey deadbolt this evening. I underlined the last item twice. Then I called Coastal Lock and Key in Corolla and asked if they had a same-day appointment. They did. 5 o'clock that evening. The first voicemail from Trent came at 11:43. It was the first of 5. I let them all go to voicemail. I wrote down the time of each one on the legal pad, and after I listened, I wrote down a one-line summary of the content. I didn't reply. 11:43. Iris, what lockbox? I don't know what you're talking about. Just call me back. This is dumb. Confused. Trying to play it casual. 12:17. Look, I'm not in the mood for games. Whit thinks you're trying to mess with our heads. Call. Me. Back. Annoyed. Wit in the background somewhere. 1:55. I just got off the phone with Wit's mom. She thinks you're being ungrateful. I told her you'd had a hard year. Just call. Triangulating. Bringing in Diane. 4:22. Iris, if you don't call me back by the end of today, I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I'm not playing. I'm serious. We have rights here too. Threat. Empty. But on the record. 8:09. I'm driving to Greenville tomorrow morning. If there's a lockbox at the old house, I'll find it. Whatever you think is in there, it's not yours alone. You don't get to keep stuff from family. I listened to that last one twice, not because it shook me, because I wanted to make sure I had the exact wording for Carolyn. I transcribed it word for word onto the pad. He'd said, "Whatever you think is in there, it's not yours alone." I underlined that sentence. He didn't know the house had closed on the 28th. The new owners had taken possession yesterday. The cedar box wasn't at 1418 Elm Street anymore. It was here, in my closet, on the second shelf. He'd find an empty bedroom upstairs and a young father painting it for the nursery. At 5 o'clock, the locksmith came. 45 minutes, $210, new deadbolt cylinder, new keys. He gave me 3. I gave him 1 back to keep on file at his shop as proof of work, and tipped him 20. I taped the new keys to the inside back wall of the kitchen drawer. The next morning, I drove 2 hours to Greenville and opened safety deposit box 247. The SunTrust branch on Memorial was quiet on a Monday at 10. I'd called ahead. The branch manager, a woman named Lorraine I'd known for 6 years, walked me back without small talk. She unlocked the room. She slid the drawer out and set it on the table. She left. I sat down. I put on my reading glasses. I opened the lid. 3 things inside. The first was a certified copy of my parents' last will and testament, signed July of the year before Mom died. The codicil, signed in October, 3 weeks before her diagnosis was upgraded to terminal. The codicil specified the house, the contents, and an explicit reason. In recognition of Iris's role as primary caregiver to both parents during their final years of life. There was an attached attorney affidavit from Tom Bryson confirming Mom and Dad had been of sound mind, separately interviewed. No coercion. The second was a handwritten letter from my father. 2 pages, lined notebook paper, his careful engineering school cursive. Dated 6 weeks before he died. He couldn't have known then how soon he'd go. The letter began, "Iris, your mother and I both know who has carried this family." He went on for 2 pages, calm and specific, saying he and Mom had watched. They'd watched who showed up to the hospital that time in 2019 when he'd had the gallbladder surgery. They'd watched who answered the phone every Sunday. They'd watched who quit her social life for 14 months without ever once making it about herself. The last line of the letter said, "Don't let him take this house from you. Use it for yourself. Promise me." The third was a sealed envelope, cream paper, my mother's handwriting on the front. It said, "Iris, read when you need it, not before." I didn't open it. I knew I would, eventually, but not yet. I put it back in the drawer with the will and Dad's letter. I took photographs of the will and the letter with my phone, both sides of each page. I emailed the photos to Carolyn before I left the room. I locked the drawer back. The cedar smell wasn't in these papers. They smelled like vault air and lemon polish. They smelled like the world telling me, here is what is true. 2 days later, on Tuesday afternoon, the buzzer went off on my apartment door. Not the lobby buzzer, the unit buzzer. Which meant whoever it was had gotten upstairs without going through the concierge. I checked the peephole. Diane Caldwell was standing in my hallway in a coral linen dress, holding a green Pyrex casserole dish with a plastic lid. She saw the peephole darken. She smiled. "Iris, sweetheart, it's Diane. May I come in for a few minutes?" I opened the door 6 inches. "How did you get up?" "Oh, a lovely young man let me in downstairs. I told him I was visiting my daughter-in-law's sister." I let her step into the entry. I did not invite her past it. I closed the door behind her. I led her out to the balcony and seated her in one of the 2 folding chairs. I kept the slider open behind us, but I did not sit. She set the Pyrex on the small bistro table between us. The lid had a label written in black marker. Diane, Caldwell Family Cookout 2024. It's still warm, she said. Chicken and rice. I make it for everyone going through a hard time. My pastor swears by it. That's kind of you. She talked for 20 minutes. She talked about family healing. She talked about how Trent had been crying. She talked about how the years go fast and how regret is the heaviest thing a woman can carry into her 70s. She talked about compromise. She used the word sweetheart 11 times. I counted. Toward the end, she leaned forward and put her hand on my knee. Iris, honey, she said, family doesn't keep secrets from family. We're all just trying to find a way back to each other. I didn't answer that one. I asked instead, Mrs. Caldwell, would you like me to refrigerate this casserole? She blinked, surprised by the pivot. Oh, yes, sure. Put it in the fridge, sweetheart. I walked the Pyrex inside. I put it on the middle shelf next to a half-empty quart of milk. There was a folded note tucked under the dish, on the lid. I read it without unfolding it all the way. 3 words in her handwriting. Call your brother. I left the note exactly where it was. I came back to the balcony and stood with my hand on the slider frame. Mrs. Caldwell, I said, I think you should go now. She went. That night, my phone started lighting up. I'd been re-added to the family group chat. It was called The Outen Family. I'd left it 4 months earlier without saying anything, because I'd needed quiet. They'd added me back without asking. Members: Trent, Whit, Diane, a man named Bart, Whit's older brother, whom I'd met twice, a woman named Linda, Bart's wife, and a name I didn't recognize at all, Marlene Caldwell, who turned out to be Whit's cousin in Charlotte. 6 of them. One of me. 47 messages came in within 2 hours. Whit, 8:13. Hey Iris, we're worried about you. Can you respond, please? We just want to know you're okay. Trent, 8:15. Iris, come on. Diane, 8:20. Family, let's please remember that grief affects people differently. We need to be patient with Iris but firm. She needs us right now. Bart, 8:31. Hey Iris, real quick. I run Caldwell Coastal Realty. I can list the condo in 48 hours. My client Brett's looking for a 1-bedroom in season. Just let me know. I read that one twice. He'd put his pitch into the family chat as if it were a casual offer, as if I'd asked. Whit, 9:06. She always was the favorite. Now she's the entitled one. Sorry, just being real. Diane, 9:10. Whitney, Whit, 9:11. I said sorry. Linda, 9:22. Sending love and prayers to everyone in this difficult time. Marlene, 9:45. Just got caught up reading. I'm so sorry y'all are going through this. Iris, sweetheart, you should know that family is forever. Money comes and goes. I screenshotted every message. I emailed the screenshots to Carolyn in batches. I muted the chat, but I did not leave it, because Carolyn had told me, the night before on the phone, not to leave. Let them talk, she'd said. Let them put it in writing. Writing is what we work with. I sat on my balcony at 10 o'clock that night with the slider closed behind me and listened to the slow rush of the sound. The condo lights of the units below mine glowed in soft yellow squares. The reception was Saturday, the HOA welcome event for new residents. I knew, without needing to think about it, that all 4 of them would show up. If you're still with me, you already know how this is going to feel. That moment when the quiet one finally produces the paper. I want you to see it the way I saw it. Drop a comment with 1 word, just say lockbox, so I know you're here. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and let's keep going. The reception is 6 days away. Wednesday morning, 8:30. I drove the 2 hours back to Pruitt and Hayes and sat in Carolyn's office. She'd cleared her morning. She read through everything on her dual monitors. The will, the codicil, Dad's letter, my phone transcripts of the 5 voicemails, the 47 group chat screenshots, the lobby footage of Sunday morning, which Robert the concierge had pulled and emailed me. The Zillow draft listing screenshot I'd grabbed from Whit's phone before she'd flipped it face down. Carolyn took notes on a yellow pad, the same kind of pad I used. We'd both been trained by the same boss decades apart. When she finished, she set her pen down. "Iris, you have a clean case," she said. "There is no equity claim here. The codicil is specific, the witnesses are clean, the affidavit is iron. Trent can hire a lawyer. He won't, but he could. And that lawyer will tell him to walk away. Whit's brother is exposed for unauthorized solicitation under North Carolina real estate licensing rules. Diane is exposed for what looks like deliberate spreading of false information to your neighbors. We don't sue any of them. We send cease and desist letters. We document. We move on with our lives." "Okay. I'll have the letters drafted by Friday. 4 envelopes, 1 for each of them. We'll have them ready to serve." She paused. She took her glasses off. "Iris, can I ask you one thing as your friend, not your lawyer?" "Sure. Why didn't you do this 6 months ago?" "I thought about it. I was tired," I said. "And I wanted them to choose differently. I kept thinking, if I just stay quiet, maybe Trent will read the will and read his dad's letter and choose to be a brother. I didn't want to be the one who escalated it." She nodded. "And now?" she said. "Now I'd like you to be my +1 Saturday at 6, the condo's HOA welcome reception." She smiled, the smallest smile, just one corner of her mouth. "Iris, I'd love to." That same Wednesday afternoon, at 2:14, my phone buzzed with a notification from the condo security app. "Lobby camera. Visitor arriving for Unit 412. I tapped through. Trent was standing at the front desk. Behind him, in a navy work shirt with a yellow patch on the shoulder, was a man holding a small tool bag. The patch said Coastal Lock and Key, the same company I'd used. I almost laughed. Of all the locksmiths in Corolla, there are 4. Trent had picked the one whose phone number was already in my call log from Sunday evening. I called Robert at the desk. "Don't let him up," I said. "He doesn't have authorization." "Yes, ma'am," Robert said. I switched the app back to camera mode and watched on mute. Trent was arguing, his neck flushed, his hands open. The locksmith stood behind him with the patient expression of a man who'd seen this scene before. Robert said something, calm, gesturing with his hand. Trent slapped the desk lightly with his palm. The locksmith took a half step back. After 8 minutes, the locksmith said something to Trent, shook his head once, and walked out. Trent stayed another 4 minutes, arguing alone. Then Robert picked up the phone, and I felt my own phone vibrate in my hand. "Mrs. Outen, your brother is asking me to give him a key from the master file. I told him I don't have a master file." "You don't?" I said. "I changed the cylinder Sunday." "Yes, ma'am, I figured. He's also saying you're emotionally unstable and that he's worried about your safety." "I'm fine, Robert. I'm sitting on my balcony watching the camera." Robert chuckled into the phone. "All right, I'll show him out." The keys Trent had taken from my entry table on Sunday opened nothing now. The new ones were in my kitchen drawer, on the tape, where I could see them every time I opened it. I'd had Coastal, the same shop he'd called, rekey my deadbolt before sunset that same day. I'd kept the receipt. I'd be glad I did. Thursday morning. I was in the elevator going down to the mailroom when the doors opened on the 3rd floor, and a woman about 71 stepped in. She had short white hair, oval gold glasses, and a tote bag from the Outer Banks Public Library. I'd seen her once or twice in the hall. "Hi," she said. "Marge Holcomb, I'm in 306. "Iris Outen, 412. She studied me. "Iris," she said. "I think we need to have a little talk before Saturday." The doors opened on the lobby. We walked out together. She nodded at Robert and led me to one of the seating pods near the front windows. "Honey," Marge said, sitting down and patting the seat beside her. "I've had 2 women in this building call me this week about you, asking if I'd heard anything, asking if you seemed all right. Both of them said the same thing, that they'd been called by a woman named Diane, who was concerned about you. Diane said you'd just lost your parents and seemed to be acting unstable. She wanted to know if anyone in the building had seen anything alarming." I felt my jaw set. That's my brother's mother-in-law. Marge nodded slowly. I figured. I worked court reporter for 31 years up in Norfolk before I retired down here, Iris. I know what a smear campaign sounds like. She tried it on me too. I told her I'd just met you, and you seemed perfectly fine, and she could call me again when she had a more interesting hobby. I smiled. Just a little. The first real smile in 3 days. The reception is Saturday at 6, Marge said. I'm sitting at table 4. I have an empty chair next to me. You take it. Bring your lawyer if you've got one. I have a feeling you do. I do. Then you're set, sweetheart. I'll have the chair waiting. She patted my arm and stood up and walked off with her library tote. I watched her go. I went back upstairs and laid out my navy dress for Saturday. Thursday evening, after the sun had dropped behind the building and the sound had gone gray, I opened the closet in my bedroom and pulled the cedar lockbox down off the shelf. I set it on the floor in front of me. I sat cross-legged in front of it the way I'd sat in front of the Christmas tree at 6 years old. The cedar smell came up like a held breath let out. Workshop. Dad's hands. Resin and pencil shavings. For a second I had to close my eyes. I unlocked it with the brass key. I lifted the lid. I'd left Mom's sealed envelope in safety deposit box 247 on Monday, but I hadn't taken anything out of the cedar box itself when I'd moved. The contents inside this one had been Dad's smaller things. His old watch, his wedding band, 2 photographs of him as a young man in fatigues, a small wooden carving of an owl he'd made the year I was born. Those things had been here the whole time, but on the inside of the lid, tucked into a thin canvas pocket I had never noticed in 25 years of looking at this box, was a second envelope. Cream paper. Mom's handwriting on the front. The same instruction. Iris. Read when you need it. Not before. She'd made 2 copies. One in the vault. One in the box. So I couldn't miss it. I untucked it. I slid my thumbnail along the seal. 2 pages. The letter was steady and clean, written in pen the way she wrote her grocery lists. It said, in her own words, that by the time I read this, someone would be telling me I owed them more than the will gave them. That they'd dress it up in family and in love. She told me not to believe it. She wrote, "Your father and I made the will the way we did because we watched. We watched who showed up. We watched who didn't. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are the last gift I can give you." I read it 3 times. Friday morning, Carolyn emailed me the drafts. 4 cease and desist letters on Pruitt and Hayes letterhead, each one specific, each one signed. Letter A, to Trent. Itemized list of the unauthorized acts, entering my home and removing my keys, attempting unauthorized lock changes, the threats in voicemail. Demand to cease all contact except through counsel. Certified mail required. Letter B, to wit. Same baseline plus the unauthorized real estate listing draft, which Carolyn had screenshotted from a public Zillow agent portal I hadn't even known she could pull. Letter C, to Diane. Cease and desist plus a separate paragraph about the privacy violation involved in calling my neighbors to spread false claims about my mental state. Carolyn had cited the specific state statute. I read the citation twice. It felt good to read. Letter D, to Bart. Cease and desist plus a draft complaint to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, copy enclosed, regarding unauthorized solicitation and using a relative's coercion to acquire a listing. I printed all 4. I addressed them by hand to make it personal. I sealed them in 4 legal-size envelopes, white, labeled in black pen. I put the 4 envelopes in my canvas tote, the one I'd carried to safety deposit box 247, the one that smelled faintly of cedar. I called Carolyn at 4 o'clock. Saturday confirmed, 6 p.m. start, meet me at the lobby at 5:45. I'll be in a navy dress. I'll be in a black blazer, she said. So we'll match. I laughed, and then I almost cried, because I hadn't laughed in months. I went to bed at 9 that night with the tote on the chair next to the bed and the letters inside it. I did not plan to hand them out unless I had to. I would only hand them out if the 4 of them came to the reception and made a scene. Carolyn and I had agreed. I knew, the way you know weather, that they were going to make me. Saturday. I woke at 6:15. The sound was silver. The herons were back. I made coffee, scrambled 2 eggs, ate at the small table in front of the slider. I'd laid out the dress the night before. Navy, knee-length, 3/4 sleeves. Low-heeled black pumps that wouldn't make me taller than Carolyn. My mother's pearl earrings. The small ones. The only piece of her jewelry I had taken from the house on Elm before the sale. I read Mom's letter one more time at the kitchen table. I read Dad's letter once. I put them both back in the cedar box and locked it. At 5:30, Marge knocked on my door. I told her I was going down at 5:45. She was early, in a lavender pantsuit and a small pearl necklace, looking like a woman who had testified in 3,000 courtrooms and never been late once. "You ready, honey?" "I think so." She looked at me a beat longer than necessary. Then she nodded. In the elevator going down, the floor numbers ticked off one at a time. The car was empty, except for us. Marge looked at her reflection in the brass panel. "You don't need to prove a thing tonight, Iris. Just remember you live here. They don't." "I don't need to prove I belong," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. "I just need to remember I do." She turned and looked at me. She nodded once. The doors opened on the lobby. Carolyn was already there, by the front desk in her black blazer with a slim leather portfolio under her arm. So was Robert at the desk, who gave me a quick, small thumbs up I appreciated more than he could have known. And so was Trent. So was Whit. So was Diane, carrying a green Pyrex casserole dish with a foil-covered lid. So was Bart, in a tan realtor's blazer with a small enamel pin on the lapel. They were already there. This next part is the one I replayed in my head for weeks afterward. If you've ever stood in front of family who treated you like a problem to solve, this is the moment you want them to feel what you've been carrying. If this story is hitting you somewhere real, hit subscribe before we walk into that reception. And let me know in the comments, who's your Carolyn? The lobby of Soundfront condominiums had been turned into a small ballroom for the night. 6 round tables, white cloth, low centerpieces of hydrangeas in mason jars, a cheese board the size of a coffee table, sparkling cider in glass pitchers, a jazz playlist running soft from a speaker in the corner, the kind of jazz that no one is actually listening to. About 40 residents had gathered. Couples in their 70s, a pair of young mothers from the 3rd floor with their husbands. Mrs. Henley, the HOA president, 65, retired accountant, in a peach silk blouse with a tortoiseshell clip in her hair. She'd called the room to attention to introduce the 3 new residents who had moved in that month. And finally, she said warmly, our newest, Iris Outen, in Unit 412. "Iris, give us a wave." I waved. Polite applause. I sat down at Marge's table, table 4. Carolyn took the seat to my left. Marge took the seat to my right. The empty chairs at our table, there were 2, stayed empty. At 6:18, the lobby doors opened. Diane came in first, with the Pyrex held in front of her like a peace offering, Trent behind her, Whit, Bart in the realtor's blazer. They had not been on the guest list because they were not residents. Diane walked straight up to Mrs. Henley. "We're so sorry to crash, Mrs. Henley. We're family of the new resident, just here to support our Iris." Mrs. Henley, who had not been warned, did the gracious thing. She gestured them in. Diane set the Pyrex down on the side table next to the cheese board, the same green Pyrex from Tuesday, the casserole dish she had carried into my home with the note tucked under the lid. She had washed it and brought it back tonight like a flag. Carolyn beside me did not move. Marge, on my other side, did not move. I did not move. The jazz kept playing. Whit scanned the room. Her eyes found me. She walked toward our table, smiling her funeral smile. Trent followed. Diane followed. Bart trailed last, looking at the cheese board like a man calculating how long he had to stay. Diane reached our table first. She did not sit. She put one hand on the back of the empty chair next to me and squeezed the wood, the way you'd squeeze a podium. "Iris, sweetheart," she said, at full volume, intentional, projecting. "We all need to clear the air. Honey, you can't keep avoiding family. It's not healthy for you, And it's not fair to your brother. Maybe 30 heads in the room turned. The jazz kept playing, oblivious. Trent stepped up beside her. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had been driven somewhere by his wife and his mother-in-law and had not been asked what he wanted to do. Iris, he said, you took my share. You bought all this with our parents' money. You owe me a real conversation. I'm asking for one. Whit was on his other side. She did the thing she did at the funeral, the soft hand on the heart, the eyes welling. We have been trying so hard to be patient, Iris. You won't even pick up the phone. Bart, near the cheese board, smiled at Mrs. Henley with the practiced calm of a man who sold houses for a living. We are just here to mediate, ma'am. Nobody wants a scene. Diane raised her voice another notch. Honey, she said, family doesn't keep secrets from family. Be the bigger person. You don't need this house more than your brother's children do. It landed like she'd planned it to, the exact same shape as the line Trent had used in my living room on Sunday morning. You don't need this house. Now in front of 40 strangers, dressed up in mother-in-law concern. Marge, on my right, set her cider down quietly. Carolyn on my left did not move. I looked at Diane. I looked at Trent. I looked at Whit. I looked at Bart, who at least had the decency to drop his eyes when mine landed on him. The room was waiting. I reached down to the canvas tote at my feet. I lifted it onto my lap. I opened the top. The jazz finally ended on a soft, sustained chord and didn't restart. I pulled the 4 envelopes out of the tote. White, legal size, hand-addressed in black pen. I set the tote back down. I stood up, 6 steps to where they were standing in the center of the room. I gave Trent envelope A first. He took it because someone hands you something, you take it. He didn't open it, he just looked at me. I gave Whit envelope B. She held it the same way, both hands, like she didn't know what kind of gift it was. I gave Diane envelope C. Her hand twitched as she received it. She didn't squeeze the chair back anymore. She held the envelope flat against her ribs. I gave Bart envelope D. He took it and looked down at it once, and then his face did a small thing it should not have done in public. It went pale. I did not raise my voice. The room was so quiet now you could hear the air conditioning. Inside each envelope, I said, is exactly what each of you has been asking for. Clarity. That was all I said. Carolyn stepped forward from behind my chair. She had her business card already in her hand. She set it on the white tablecloth in front of Trent. Carolyn Pruitt, she said. Partner at Pruitt and Hayes. I'm Iris's counsel of record. I'd strongly recommend reading the contents before you continue this conversation. Trent, slowly, opened envelope A. The will was on top. He stared at the title page for 3 seconds. He flipped to the codicil. He read the line about primary caregiver. He turned to my father's letter, 2 pages of careful cursive on lined notebook paper, and his face did something I had not seen since the funeral. His eyes, for 2 seconds, no more, got wet. Dad wrote this? He said, barely above a whisper. I nodded once. His lower lip trembled. He was about to say something. Maybe to me, maybe to himself. Whit grabbed the letter out of his hand. She's lying. Trent, this is forged. He came back. He shook his head slowly. Whit, he said. That's his handwriting. She turned to him. Her face changed entirely. Trent, don't be weak. She's manipulating you. We talked about this. Diane had opened her envelope and was holding the cease and desist letter in one hand and Carolyn's business card in the other. Her mouth was open. Bart had set his envelope on the cheese board and was staring at the floor. Diane recovered first. She did the thing people do when they've been caught. She got louder. This is an ambush. You invited us here to humiliate us in front of strangers. I did not raise my voice. I did not move from where I stood. Mrs. Caldwell, I said, none of you were invited. You introduced yourselves to Mrs. Henley as family of the new resident. There are 40 people here who heard you do it. Marge stood up at our table. She was 71 and 4'10", and she looked at Diane like a judge who had been waiting for a chance. "I heard her say it," Marge said. "Mrs. Henley heard her say it. The two ladies from 601 heard her say it." Mrs. Henley by the side table nodded once, slow and crisp. "I did, in fact." Wit had switched modes. The funeral voice was gone. The tears came easily and fast. "Iris, you don't understand what this has done to our family, to Trent. He cries himself to sleep. Do you even care? Do you have any idea what he's been carrying?" I looked at Trent. Trent was looking at the floor. "Whitney," I said, "is the only person in this room who has cried about my mother in front of me. Before tonight. My mother. Trent visited her 3 times in 14 months. He stayed 40 minutes the longest time." Bart, near the cheese board, tried to broker. "Listen, why don't we all just step outside? Calm down, take a beat." "No one is stepping outside," Carolyn said. Her voice was conversational. It carried across the room anyway. "The cease and desist is effective immediately. Any further contact with my client comes through me. The packet you're each holding includes my office line. I will respond Monday morning." Diane lifted the envelope toward Carolyn. This is harassment. You can't just—" "I can, actually," Carolyn said. "And I have. Mrs. Caldwell, the privacy violation citation is on page 2. Diane went silent. Trent had not moved from where he stood. He was folding the letter back together with the slow, careful hands of a man who used to fold his father's flag at the funeral. He put the letter in the breast pocket of his shirt. Diane found her voice one more time. She was breathing hard. "What do you have to say for yourself, Iris? In front of all these people, look at them looking at you." I did. I looked at the room. 40 residents, my new neighbors, the people who would be my neighbors for the next 20 years if I was lucky, all of them still seated, all of them watching. I looked at Trent. He was looking back at me. His eyes were red. He was not going to apologize. I could see that. I could see all the years of him under the surface, and the wife pulling at his sleeve, and the mortgage and the truck leasing debt and the kids he had with Whit, and the trips he had wanted to take, and the version of him that might still be in there somewhere, but had been very, very busy. I looked at Diane. "The lockbox said everything," I told her quietly. "You just refused to read." I turned. I walked back to table 4. I sat down between Marge and Carolyn. For about 3 seconds, no one moved. Then Whit grabbed Trent's elbow and pulled him toward the doors. He went without resistance. Diane snatched up her purse from where she had set it. She turned for the casserole. Bart, who had not been told what to do, picked the green Pyrex up from the side table by reflex and held it. Diane stormed past him toward the door. Bart followed, still holding the dish. The doors closed behind them. 4 seconds of silence. Then Marge clapped, just once, very softly. Mrs. Henley cleared her throat. "Well," she said, "let's get to the food, shall we?" 28 days passed. The 4 cease and desist letters were served by certified mail the following Tuesday. The receipts came back signed within the week. Trent had hired a lawyer in Greenville, who returned Carolyn's call within 48 hours and told her, in the polite language attorneys use, that his client did not intend further contact. The lawyer billed Trent $620 and told him to stop talking. Whit unfollowed me on Instagram. Bart's draft listing on the Zillow agent portal disappeared. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission opened a preliminary file on Bart's solicitation and issued him a warning letter. No suspension. Diane sent me one apology card in a pink envelope with a watercolor of a hummingbird on the front. I read it once. I did not respond. I put it in a shoebox in the closet next to the cedar box. Trent sent one email, 4 lines, no subject. I read what Dad wrote. "I'm sorry I didn't read it sooner. I won't bother you. I hope you're okay." I saved the email to a folder I named Family. I did not reply. The numbers, when I added them up at the end of the month, $1,840 in legal fees. 4 envelopes served. $0 conceded. 0 follow-up incidents. 1 quiet condo, 4 floors above the sound, with a closed door and a deadbolt that worked. On the morning of day 29, I opened the cedar box one more time. I'd thought I'd seen everything in it. The owl carving, the wedding band, the photographs, the canvas pocket where Mom had hidden her letter. But that morning, for no good reason except that I wanted to spend a minute with my parents, I lifted out the felt liner at the bottom. Under the liner was a small velvet pouch the color of old red wine. I'd never seen it before in my life. Inside the pouch was my mother's silver locket, the one I'd thought had been sold at the estate sale with the rest of her jewelry. She had taken it out. She had hidden it here for me to find. When I opened the locket, the tiny photograph inside was of me, age 6, sitting on my father's lap on the front porch of the house on Elm Street. I was holding a melted ice cream cone. He was laughing. On the back of the velvet pouch, in my mother's pen, 3 lines. You were always enough, by yourself. Don't forget. Love, Mom. I put the locket on. The chain was short. It sat at my collarbone like it had always been there. Family isn't whoever shares your last name with you. It's whoever read your father's letter the first time and didn't need a second. That's my story. 1 lockbox, 4 envelopes, 40 witnesses, and a quiet locket I still wear. If this reminded you to update your own paperwork, or to keep certified copies somewhere safe, take that as a sign. Drop a comment. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.